So in this section, I'm going to cover inking the Tetra Pak plate. So unlike a traditional intaglio uh, printmaking plate, where we would use a piece of a squeegee or a piece of cardboard to draw the ink across the plate, I'm going to take a different approach. This approach is used by other printmakers as well to apply the ink. It's more of a dabbing approach. Some folks do it with a foam brush. Some folks do it with some sort of dabbing applicator, whether that's cloth or other method. I'm going to use a makeup applicator, and I'm going to use a piece of newsprint just to hold the edge of the plate so I'm not getting fingerprints on it. But basically all I want to do is push the ink into the line work of the plate. And while I'm doing this, I'm not applying too much pressure. I'm also trying not to over ink the plate. You can see a little bit, there's some transparency to the ink. You can see the silver of the Tetra Pak showing through. Unlike a copper plate or zinc or plexiglass where you would significantly cover it, I'm just gonna put a lighter application there. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a makeup remover pad to pull the ink back. There's other items that you could use, other printmaking ink removal solutions, fabrics. Speedball makes a really great mesh fabric for removing ink. But I'm basically going to use this, pulling the ink back so that we're not completely coated. And as you can see, there's almost like a fogging effect of ink on the plate. And you might say, oh, if I could print that plate right now, you'd actually be pretty surprised at the amount of ink that's actually still on the plate. So with Tetra Pak, there's two parts of the process that greatly impact the print that you're going to get out of it. The first part is the mark making and the line work that you create on the front end. The second part really is the inking and the ink removal process. And so those are two critical parts. So in the ink removing process, like as I showed you, you're gonna remove the vast majority of the ink, so there's just a light fog of ink here. But then you have the ability to go in and create highlights and levels of ink application to the plate. So there's areas where you can completely pull the ink out, other areas where you can leave it in so that you have tonal effect. So what I really want to do with this particular piece is within the feather itself, I'm going to pull back some of the ink out of the feather. I've got a lot of line work, so we're going to get some significant detail there. Again, I'm going to continue to do that, and I'm going to use a makeup Q-tip. You can use typical Q-tips. They're a little bit cheaper. I like these just because they have some finer tips, so you can do more detailed work. Again, so I'm going to pull some of that ink out of the feather itself, but then I'm going to come down through the center of this so that I can really pull the ink out of the stem of the feather that's holding all the hairs. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to be pulling the ink away from the outer edge of the feather. And hopefully you can see that I'm doing that. So this whole triangular area I'm going to pull the ink off of, but I'm going to pay significant attention to this outer edge around the feather. I really want the feather itself to pop up and off of the surface. Again, I'm going to continue taking ink out of this entire area using the Q-tip. But then I'm going to come in here and I'm really going to focus on these areas around the line work. I'm really going to pull a lot more ink out of there. I really want those areas to jump up and be much whiter. And so, you know, think about this when you're working on your particular design as to where you want tonal ink areas and where you don't. Again, continue using newsprint or some other paper solution, or whether it's a squeegee or tweezers or something, just so that you're not getting fingerprints on the plate itself. Again, I'm going to continue to work around that line work. I really want to get some of that tonal color out of there so I have strong, whiter highlights. I'm still going to pull a little bit more out of here. There's a lot of detail that was put in with the rollet and some of the stippling that I did in this particular plate. Again, going to come up on the edge of this. So there's a lot of line work in here associated with the quill itself. So this is drawn line work that's in here that I want to be on the darker side, but I do want to pull out around it so that I get that to pop up and out. So I'm going to bring that in a little bit closer so you can see what I've done. So I've gone into these areas here where I pulled out a lot of the ink. You can still see some tonal in there. Again, you can see where I highlighted this area here. And so then at this point, in my mind, this is ready to be printed. I would bring this to the press. Just so everybody's aware in this process, I like to moisten the paper. I do not like to soak the paper in water. That's just my personal preference. Usually what I'll do is I'll use a water bottle spritzer. I have one that creates a fine mist. I would take the paper, place the paper on a towel, mist both the front and backs of the paper so they are damp, not soaking wet, just dampened, and I would close the towel over it just so that the moisture will soak into the paper so that the paper is cool and damp. And then I would bring the plate over to the press. I would put a piece of newsprint under the plate itself, place the paper over, put another piece of newsprint over the paper to protect the blanket from getting wet, put the blanket over, and run that through the press. So I have a piece that I already printed and just wanted to be able to show you. So you can see within this piece the areas where I pulled out all that ink so I can maintain highlights in here, again, in this area. And you can see with all the additional detail work that was done, how it's darker out here. I pulled out a lot of the ink within the feather hairs itself, but you can see because of the line work that I did, I do have significant color and detail. And again, you can see the highlight down through the stem of the quill itself. So that is a typical print pulled off of Tetra Pak. Again, it's going to vary based on size that you do, the amount of detail and texture that you put in there. You can layer colors in. You can create backgrounds and overprint with your Tetra Pak plate. You can mix colors. You can print an unmarked Tetra Pak piece of paper and then overprint with your marked and imaged Tetra Pak there afterwards. I was going to show you another piece that I had done. So this plate that I did earlier that includes significant amount of line work as well as stippling. I have a sample of that here. You can see the line work really stands out, and you can see how great the stippling shows up here. Additionally, you can see the areas where I created almost kind of like a halo effect around it by pulling out the color in here within the appendage areas of this walking figure. But that's just a quick overview in regards to the inking of a Tetra Pak plate. Hope that helped, and we'll discuss more.